Good evening and welcome to VI Voices. I'm Emil Henderson III along with Clint Ferris, Boyd McFarlane, and Yoki Hanley. Tonight we continue our election coverage as we have with us the gubernatorial team of Donna Christensen and Basil Ottley. We're going to be questioning them, asking them a lot of their issues and what it is that they plan to do for the people of the Virgin Islands as they seek your vote. As you know, we've had Delegate Christensen on the show before, and this will be the first time that we will have herself as well as her Lieutenant Governor running mate, Basil Ottley. So be prepared for our questions. We'll be back in a moment with Donna Christensen and Basil Ottley. And welcome back to VI Voices. We are honored here at VI Voices to have with us Delegate Donna Christensen and her running mate Basil Ottley. Welcome to VI Voices.
Thank you.
Delegate, this is definitely not your first time. I think you've been here like 4 times already in the years that we've been on.
Yes.
And this will be your first time.
The first time.
On VI Voices. So please welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What I wanted to start off is what I did with some of the others. Give us your top 3 primary issues that your team is going to put forth if you are successful in 2014?
Well, the economy is the major issue, and so and we'll be talking about that, and I'm sure you'll have some more questions, but how we create jobs, how we stimulate the economy, how we support our small businesses, and how we bring revenue into this territory, and how we keep it here. As a doctor, you know, healthcare and with the crises that we have gone through and are going through today, that's a very big issue for me. And our energy and the cost of energy. But even when you talk about the economy, that encompasses just about everything from education to energy to
The
crime and everything else.
Yes. Okay, one of the things, let's start out primarily with energy, because I think that's a major issue for many of us who are having to pay exorbitant amounts of energy costs. Not just as residents, but primarily as business people, which is really becoming a turn-off for attracting businesses here and for keeping small businesses open. What is your structural plan for us to deal with our energy crises?
Well, we like what WAPA is doing, but it's not going to take us as far as we need to go. And so we want to see a Virgin Islands that is pretty much self-sufficient, using all of our natural resources, so that we're never again dependent on what happens outside of us. Basil is really the energy expert on the team, but we talk about storage and using some of the upcoming storage systems to really make us that self-sufficient, and distributed generation as well. Some of the game changers that we're seeing across the United States. And we've both worked in the energy sphere with WAPA over the years, and we are looking forward to their integrated resource plan, which is a very important thing that happens in most jurisdictions, where you look at what is the best mix of energy sources that can give you the lowest cost. And I would look forward as governor to having that updated on a regular basis, because things change, new technologies come online, and we want to continue to lower the cost to get as close to the U.S. cost as possible. We're now 5 times that. And we recognize the hardship that it is putting on families. We see them going without electricity. And businesses, I tend to shop in small stores, and it's painful to hear them talk about how they're just barely hanging on.
Okay. Delegate,
you might want to add.
A word in your statement was hardship, and you used that under the term economy. Do you think the Virgin Islands people can endure another 4 years of democratic rule? Because under this democratic administration for the past 8 years, it has been nothing but hardship. And I've not heard the Democratic Party's position on any of those issues that adversely affect the common man. I was talking off here, and I brought up the topic of 2011, the 8% cut, the increase in gross receipts. I've not heard the Democratic Party's position, and to me, that means they endorse everything for this particular administration. Can we, afford a Donna Basil administration, who's definitely the Democrat, a part of this Democratic Party?
Absolutely, because we're going to be a different administration. We know the hardships. Both of us have spoken out against them at various times, sometimes internally, sometimes publicly. So it's not a Democratic administration per se. The Democrats have done a lot for this territory over the years. The Democratic Party has created the middle class, who improved education.
Correct, and I think that was done under Earl B. Ottley way back when. But let's come 40, 50 years.
Well, let's just say it's time for a new Ottley to take the reins.
But maybe it's not. Yeah, maybe it'd be time for maybe.
That's not the only thing the last Ottley did, but anyway.
But if we talk about come 50 years now, the middle class is under stress. The middle class is definitely eroded. A former candidate said she was part of the lower, when she was born, she was part of the lower middle class. I even said the lower middle class doesn't even exist within the Virgin Islands right now. You have the impoverished and the upper class. What do you say?
And that's an issue that's challenging the entire United States. The discussion of income inequality and disparities and the income levels between the haves and the have-not is a big topic going on. When I was in the Senate, I took the leadership to make sure that we got done a living wage study, because everybody had been talking about, we're getting these salaries, but they're too low. But never was a scientific exploration done to really establish what the true cost of living here in the Virgin Islands is. And I ushered that legislation forward. And for the first time, we have credible scientific documentation of what it costs an individual person as well as different families to live here. The first time it was ever done. In 2009, the Bureau of Economic Research came out with the study, and it showed great disparity between what the U.S. Poverty rate is and where the cost of living is here in the Virgin Islands. What we're saying is we're going to take up that evidence-based establishment of what the true cost is here to begin directing programs in reality. In the past, we've been putting up our finger in the air and say, we think people need this income increase with no science to back it up. What that report established is that a single person requires at least $22,000 to $23,000. You're talking about at least $10 an hour. $10 an hour to just make it without government assistance. If you don't have that information at hand, and you're talking about building programs, you're fooling the people.
So basically, you're saying, so how long have we had this information?
Since 2009.
Since 2010. Since 2010.
Yes.
So and at that particular time, you were in Interior, am I correct?
Yes, I was at the Department of Interior.
And so you were right there advocating for the people in the Department of Interior.
Wait, let's hold up here. It is not the role of the Department of Interior to be an advocate in that manner.
No.
You elect senators who are your advocates who are on the ground. Remember, at the Department of Interior, I was a federal agent.
Okay, so what was your role at the Department of Interior?
My role at the Department of Interior, right, was to help shape the federal policy to provide local on-the-ground insights into what the challenges impacting the territories were.
So SIE, that formula did went into your insights of what was taking place in the Virgin Islands.
Exactly, and we worked hard to make sure that we got the funding and the grants in place to assist a number of our agencies that are currently trying to do work. Okay. Remember, it's not the role of the federal government to lead elected officials here on the ground.
Correct.
That is not the role. In fact, the Constitution prohibits that.
It's the role of the local officials on the ground.
The people who Virgin Islanders elect to do that.
Correct. And that's where it comes in. And a lot of those elected officials were your Democrats, which were endorsed by you and your party. And I'm going to tell you straight up.
But elected by the people of the Virgin Islands. I mean, you're acting as if they're not all of our representatives. A majority of the people elected these people because they felt they were worthy.
Hold on a minute. Yes. I think the question that nobody's asking, I think we should start first with, was how was the working relationship between your office and the administration? Because you can only do but to here.
And
What
that is
was the
same-
relationship between your office and the current administration in order for us to get the benefit of the work that you were doing in Washington?
Well, again, the role of the federal government is we cannot lead. We stood always ready to facilitate.
No, that's not
and
what I'm
to
asking.
assist.
What I'm asking is the relationship. What was the relationship?
They support, the governor sets the agenda and the direction, and Interior supports the governor.
Okay.
In those, I think the study on the living wage was really done when you were a senator.
When I was a senator.
When he was a senator, that was a local study that was done and left with the VI government. But they're Democrats. Basil and I have always been Democrats.
So have
And-
I.
Sorry?
So have I. I've always been a Democrat.
We've always been Democrats, and party politics being what they are, yes, we support the Democratic nominees, but we don't always agree with the Democratic nominee. And where there are points of departure, we make it very clear where we don't agree.
Good.
But just because it could have been an independent at this particular point in time, with the recession, with Hovenza closing, and all of the other things that happened that really shook this territory to its core, and we probably would have ended up in the same place.
I would beg to differ, because I know, at least with Hovenza, being a former employee, even though I was there in the last 5 years, even from the time I arrived, you could see the writing on the wall. And I'm sure for anyone who was there even longer could see. And this is a small island, people talk. So it's not like the Hovenza closure came like hail falling from the sky, nobody saw it. There just was not any plans put in place to say, well, okay, when this beast now dies, what's going to happen? So I can't say that it happened just so, and it's like it was a shock.
But I think from the 70s and the 80s, there has been a consistent discussion that we needed to diversify our economy.
Absolutely.
And from administration to administration, generation to generation, we've all understood the importance of doing that. I think we now see and are being impacted by the result of having not done that. And it is going to be implicit that the next administration seeks to look at where are the opportunities to begin diversifying our economy, perhaps not putting all of our baskets in one big entity, and figuring that because that entity is there, we can then sit back and figure everything is going to move along nicely. We've seen it's not, and so what we're saying, you look at some of the models that are out there that we know we're going to have to follow, is we're going to have to perhaps look at smaller opportunities. There are things that we've been talking about, whether it be sports tourism, whether it be using our broadband capacity, doing precision manufacturing. There are some great opportunities. Once we get resolved the medical situation that's happening within our hospitals, we have $50-70 million of our own people's money that is going outside seeking help here. And that's not money that you have to create. That's money that you have to build the trust to keep here.
And that's a good segue, because your second primary issue was healthcare, and we're going through some major issues with our hospitals, primarily the one at Louis Hospital. And what makes it so distressing is the fact that that's our only hospital. And for some of us, or for some individuals who really don't have the luxury of being able to leave and go someplace else, they have to stay here. It really concerns me that we're dealing with all of these issues with our hospitals and what our health care is going to be like. Under your administration, what can we see to at least change the trajectory of where we're going right now with our health care?
And and even for those who may be able to go away in an emergency situation, you just cannot go off island. So we need to make sure that our health facilities are providing the services and the patients are safe once they get in there. We've always said, even before this crisis, and having worked with the hospital and the health department to avert other crises in the past, we've always said that our health system, the entire health system, needs a total restructuring. a total restructuring. And we'd already begun to have conversations with folks who can help us take a look, assess the entire system, and make sure, and then help us to restructure it in such a way that it provides a seamless, high quality care to everyone who needs that care. The health department needs to be a public health entity. It needs to regulate.
Yeah.
It needs to do community health and prevention, and the environmental health needs to be beefed up. Chikungunya is a prime example of where we need to really have a stronger environmental health capacity in our health department. Our hospitals, while they need more funding, they need to be more efficient. And we've been continuously working on that. Our health clinics are doing very well. Frederiksted and East End are doing very well. And they're run by a community board.
Yeah.
I mean, really run by a community board.
But
Charles
they have
Howard,
a-
the clinic at Charles Howard, you said is doing well?
No.
Frederiksted
Frederiksted and East End.
branches.
Okay.
Frederiksted and
No,
East End.
but as a
No,
medical
Charles
doctor,
Howard, yes.
but as a medical doctor, and having read, well, let me not presume. Have you read the CMS report? I presume.
Yes,
you
I have.
I mean, I'm not a doctor.
It was
but I am
heartbreaking.
Okay. And
I mean,
worked
I was
with-
reading it on the plane, and I'm going, "Oh my God!" Yeah, people must have wondered what was happening to me. Okay, the first part of it, I'm reading, and I said, "This is what they're going to decertify us because, because it was like this door ain't closing right and that door ain't closing." I'm saying, "Really?" And then the second part was about the board, and we've been clamoring, and I've been part of that, for the board to be fully constituted so that they could do the work that they needed to do. The whole second part is about the board. So, I mean, I was fussing about that. And then I got to the patient care issues. And, not only as a physician, but just as a human being, a person who lives in St. Croix, and seeing those things was very heartbreaking. But, I would also say too. One Friday night, they called me and said, "Can you come to the hospital? We need to discuss something with you." And it was the doctors and the administration concerned about patient care. And this might have been mid-year, maybe around May or so. And they were concerned because they didn't have enough nursing staff. People would come and wait too long. Sometimes they'd leave, they'd come back sicker or worse, And so they called me in because they were concerned about patient care. And that was when I first called for the state of emergency, because I knew we had to get through nurse licensure issues more quickly. We had to increase the salaries, and we had to do other things to make sure that we had the staff that we needed. So,
No, the lunacy of not wanting to create a state of emergency for this hospital completely baffled me. I could see why you would want that. It makes sense, and at least gets us to a point where we're able to see some shimmer of hope to make changes and change, like I said, change the trajectory. But for the governor to outright say, "No, I'm not doing that." I mean, I'm trying to figure out, is there any benefit, as you can see it, to not calling it a state of emergency, declaring the hospital a state of emergency?
I can see no downside. I will tell you that some of the consultants, as well as the governor, argued that we would alarm the public. And
More than we're already alarmed?
Really, that was my
Okay.
point. I said they're already alarmed. Look at the newspaper front page, reports all over the place. How could you alarm people more? So, and I just felt that because you know how slow government works, we needed to expedite whatever processes needed to be put in place to get this hospital functioning at a level that our community needs it to function.
Yes.
And I also felt that it would give the people of the Virgin Islands some comfort, because they would know that their government is pulling out all of the stops to make sure that they get the care that they need. And I thought it would also say to the federal government that, hey, these people are taking this seriously. I mean, we're looking at some grants that the hospital has applied for. We want to say this is an emergency, so give us special consideration.
I guess my thing would be, not meaning to cut you off, even kind of piggybacking on what you said earlier then. So why aren't you hearing the rest of the Democratic Party coming out and saying, "Governor, that was a bad move"? Because I can speak from personal experience of the incompetent level of doctors and nurses in there, because my granddaughter nearly died twice in this hospital here. You understand? So I'm sure that she is a patient here, case number whatever inside of that. Because I couldn't even start reading because finish reading it because it was so heartbreaking. You understand? But where's the rest of the Democratic Party to say, Governor, you're wrong? Call it a state of emergency.
We keep. Where is the rest of the community? I mean, because this is a community issue,
Right.
and I think we have to get beyond trying when you got certain issues that are a crisis to the community. To me, it's not about Democratic Party. It's not about independence.
Pause right here. We elect leaders to lead.
But this is what I'm trying to say.
We empower our leaders. We vest our power in them. In 15, we put board members.
But wait, I'm not arguing with you. What I'm saying is, it has nothing to do with party. It has to do with your responsibility as a member of this community to speak out.
No, but we have their voices have been speaking up. But if you think about it, your party has a lock on government offices and on leadership in the Virgin Islands. Your party holds national office. Your party holds membership in the legislature, majority membership in the legislature. The Democratic Party, not your party, but the Democratic Party sits in government house. If you think about it, all of those people impact the lives of Virgin Islanders, and I've not seen the membership. I'll give you a good example. The Senator Alicia Truckee Hansen pardon. Where was the Democratic Party to be ahead of this? The only party that came out, the only group that came out was the League of Women's Voters.
Well, I mean,
and your party came out thereafter, after the pardon was already given, putting some of your senators in jeopardy.
No, but I mean, I think it's easy to constantly be calling out the Democratic Party in an atmosphere where we all know that the institutions of party politics in the Virgin Islands is weak. And so that's what I'm saying. We as a community have to come and stand together and begin shaping the policies that we want. To link one administration as representing all of our actions, I think is unfair, because if you go through time, you cannot say the policies of Alex Farrelly were the same as Turnbull, as the same as John DeYoung. It's not consistent. I mean, you have each administration, each person, yes, says we are a Democrat, but everybody sitting in those seats have different priorities and they have different orders of the day. Yes, that person is an elected official of the Democratic Party, but I wouldn't say that you hold then the entire party hostage to it. Public officials.
And I would dare to just interject that I am a Democrat, and I have provided leadership for my 18 years, and I've produced for 18 years, and I have always defended and sought to protect the rights of the people of this territory, and I'm a Democrat.
But remember, we are known by the company that we.
Let's do this. I think that we're getting a little astray, because what I think is a fair question.
Yes.
What I think is a fair question is to ask for the Democratic leaders, whether you're in the territorial offices or you're in, when I say territorial party offices, the local party offices, or in the Senate or government house, when the 35,000 registered Democrats vote, let's assume that we've all voted Democrat and put you in, we look to our leaders to be the voice for us, okay? And I think it is a fair question for Democrats to question, well, why isn't my party, the leadership of my party, speaking out on certain issues? I'm a Democrat, and I believe in the tenets of the Democratic Party. Do I believe that every person who's a Democrat is living by the tenets of the Democratic Party? No, I don't believe that.
Exactly.
And I believe that there's some that are.
And some in leadership
But
may not be.
But for me, I can discern between the two. There's some people that don't. They look at the Democratic Party. That's why they can have the kind of arguments that Clint is making, or the generalizations, I should say, about the Democratic Party, because they don't discern the difference between a person that's following the Democratic tenets and a person that's simply a Democrat for themselves.
And I mean, I don't think we're going to solve all the issues with our political party politics in the territory. But I think there's one thing that the party structure, as far as the Democratic Party and the others afford, is for everybody who's a registered Democrat. If you are not satisfied the leadership. If you're not satisfied with the direction of the party, we have territorial committee positions that are available, district
Hardly
party
anybody
positions that
ran
are
for them.
available. That, I mean, are you a registered Democrat?
Yes, I am.
And so there was an opportunity in this past election to avail yourself of those wonderful ideas that you're professing. You could have been an agent of change. And that's what I tell young people, that it takes 200 committed young people to change the course of this party or any party. But where is our willingness to forget individuality, to let's form together as a new generation? Because that's how, I mean,
So then
there
let me
were
ask-
good and bad
so
things
let me-
about my uncle's era, right? But they faced the same type of issues when it was the progressive guide that they were facing. And you had a generation of young men and women who decided that this doesn't represent who we are. And so they went out there and they created a new party because they knew through the political power structure there was an opportunity for change. Where is our hunger?
Okay,
Where
I think
is
that's a
our
different- I think that's a
determination?
different show.
But yeah, hold on. You know the funny thing, you're speaking to someone
Yes,
who has picked up that mantle
wonderful.
and have gone out
Yes,
and educated people on the issues.
yes,
And have been active in this community.
yes.
But your party,
But
no, hold on.
but, I mean,
My party
yes,
don't
yes.
want me to be active.
But
no, but hold on.
but
again.
here is that-
no,
but did you want- but-
excuse me,
Okay,
but no,
one
no,
minute,
hold
one
on.
minute, stop.
But
Wait, oh, look, stop. Wait, we're not getting anywhere doing that.
Yes.
So let's. And welcome back to VI Voices. We're here with Delegate Donna Christensen and Basil Ottley. And again at VI Voices, let me apologize to our listening audience for the outbursts that you heard before we went on break. We've dealt with that issue and we should not be having any more of those as we continue with this interview. We've spoken to the audience and so hopefully that should be clear. So I want to come back now and deal with something that I think is extremely important to all of us and the community, and that's the issue of public corruption. And I'm not quite sure how much more clear we can make our disdain as a community for public corruption. What do you foresee in your administration being able to go in there on January 5th to start the process of eradicating the kind of corruption we've seen in recent time?
Well, first of all, I think we can put systems in place that make it very difficult for people to take the people's money and do what they want with it. But whistleblowers are an important part of this. And we want to strengthen the ability of people. We're going to say, if you see something, say something. We're going to be like Homeland Security. And we'll make sure that a whistleblower would know that they are completely protected under this administration. So that's for starters. But zero tolerance from the top all the way across. Because people will come to you and tell you, oh, we saw this happening, but they will not speak up. They will not. In the hospital, when I was medical director, people would tell us these people had taken the sheets, they'd taken the food and whatever. We brought in internal affairs from the police department to help us, and nobody would step forward and say anything.
And then on top of that, I think being a former senator, I could tell you the ethics laws and regulations in our code are very limited, not very detailed and clear. I know when I was a local government employee, I never got any ethics training. As a federal employee, every year I had to go through a processed ethics course, a 3-hour course. Every year that you have to take, you have to qualify in order to get your computer privileges. It was everything from what is allowable from your computer usage. There's a booklet I received telling me I was in a position of public trust. So there were certain gifts I couldn't receive, certain lobbyists who I couldn't have lunch with, and they drilled that in constantly. I don't think any government employee has that type of experience. There are a lot of gray areas that nobody knows you shouldn't be doing. And I think we have to put you have to make the rules clear. You have to make the lines black.
So you would be sending down legislation then within what, the first 100 days, the first
Yes,
600
most
days,
definitely.
first 100 days on what is ethics and
Yes.
how it should be.
Most definitely. And institute within personnel regular annual training so that people can understand, especially for those people who are in positions of public trust, where you're handling money, you're in contracts and areas. People need to understand what the limitations are, and they have to be constantly be told. I also, and both of us, every 5 years, I had to go through a thorough background check again, where I had to fill out questionnaires. Investigators came, questioned me, and it was taken very seriously. And I think in those areas that are very sensitive, we should be willing, and we will be willing to go there.
So
And
you're saying-
we'll vet very carefully our cabinet and make it very clear that this is not something that we will tolerate.
So in absence of legislation, will you be having your commissioners, directors, and administration sign a clear document that states what about conflict of interest and what is considered conflict of interest, what code of ethics are? Is that something, in the absence of legislation, that you be putting forth when you have a commissioner, when you have a director within your administration?
Yes, I would say yes, because we would, first of all, we're going to vet them. Second of all, yes, they would be very clear to understand that this is the code of ethics that we explain. I haven't gone as far as to think we're going to make them sign a piece of paper, but I think that's reasonable to assume. And you know, what we have to go through every year is go through a conflict of interest document. And I think, you know, it's worthwhile to periodically have that instituted in government as well at the higher levels of government. But when you have a government, as we plan to have, that's transparent and very accountable, it'll make it very difficult.
Good.
I want to bring it back to the hospital very quickly. Do you support the hospital being managed by a private sector or by a private entity who reports to a governing board?
I don't support privatization of our hospital, but a manager, I think the management, the issues are finances, patient care, and management. So we want to have the best management in place, whether we hire a CEO that has experience and training, whether we find somebody in the staff that can fill that position, or whether we go outside and look for a management entity. But management is key to making sure that our hospital runs the way it's supposed to run.
So you would support a private manager?
I'm not supporting privatization, but I would
Not
support
privatization,
a private manager. That's something within the realm of possibility.
I want to take this, if everybody's finished with healthcare, no, because
Go ahead.
I want to touch base on the economy and small business, because I hear a lot of people throwing around a lot of buzzwords and keywords with, you know, I support small business, we're going to make the territory more business friendly, you know, and the banks are going to have money flowing and it's going to be manna from heaven, you know. But what really is your plan to bring back the middle class, you know, and that have the small businesses that are here who are struggling, you know, not struggle? You know, I mean, we do have WAPA. I know for me, whatever little profit I make, WAPA gladly hands it out. You know, I tell people there's only two things guaranteed in life: to die and pay WAPA.
So WAPA is one. So we will talk about the other things.
Right, with small business, you know, my
Sure.
issue has been with the customs zones, we being out of it, how it affects us, because everything must be flown into the territory. You know, we don't have the luxury of Puerto Rico where they're in the customs zones, so you have that drastic reduction in shipping costs.
And guess what? They're complaining about shipping costs. It's amazing. But one, we have been talking with private equity firms that are doing business in the Caribbean, supporting small businesses, especially small businesses that exist and want to expand. We have been looking at how we can set up a community development entity that would access new market initiative funding and other funding that's there for communities to use to support small business development. Basil will be in control of banking. I probably let him talk about the banking, but we know, and at the last small business event, I said, you know, banks, please, y'all have to do better, because here we are. Most of the guaranteed loans from USDA and SBA are being loaned by outside banks. I said, you can't let outside banks lend more than you're lending here. And I have data on the discrepancy between what they do in Puerto Rico and what they do here. So, and you know, we talk about whether they're fulfilling their obligations as they should under CRA. The community, you know, so there's a lot of things that, you know, we're looking at, but clearly, as a person who's been in small business for 10 years, who was a small business owner, who knows the importance of the small business sector as the foundation of any economy, and if we want to grow our economy and create jobs, that's the sector where it's going to come from. Even my national heritage area is part of growing and supporting small local businesses in the territory.
I mean, just to take off on what the delegate has said, I mean, a big problem for small businesses here is access to capital. And as you said, there are plenty of federal programs out there that our local banks are not cooperating with. And some of the ideas we had is to begin looking at the roles of our credit unions, to begin looking at the way some of their charters are conditioned, to see if they can begin getting involved with those new types of lending. There's, as the delegate said, where Puerto Rico and other places have been able to get on the ground help to small businesses is by creating something called a community development corporation. And the community development corporations, there's special funding that they can access from the Department of Treasury that are particularly for distressed areas. As you've been hearing, President Obama has been talking about his new promise zones.
Yes,
and having your community development corporations in place, they're able to do a lot of creative lending that we have not really ventured into. Also, we've talked a lot about the incubators, and I think we have a lot of young, talented entrepreneurs who, because of the startup cost, because of the cost of getting into leased buildings, we've been talking about incubators, settings, and we really haven't put the resources into that are necessary. Or the management, right? And I mean, when I was in grad school, there were some great models that I looked at in Pennsylvania. It was one called, I forget the name of it, but it was one of the leading incubator entities in the nation. And what they did is they had technical staff, similar to what you see at the SBDC, in a building. And they had spaces where they had folks come in, they worked on their business plans, but they did more. Because as a small business, things come up. And if you don't have that mentor to help you go through the issues of your cash flow right there on the spot, you can easily go under. I'm talking to some of the expert restaurateurs on St. Thomas. They talked about how the fact that they have been able to survive the increases in WAPA because of their experience with managing their inventory, making sure that they're shifting their cash flow lines in different areas. Like one thing they would do, they would lower the price of their food and increase their drinks so that balance things out. And having that mentorship from people who have skin in the game when you're starting out, I think is critical for businesses that are just coming.
I have a question here. Delegate Christensen.
Yes, sir.
I've heard this around, but this is my concern. I see the faces in your campaign, and they're very familiar faces. They're connected to this administration. And I am concerned that the same issues and the same things that were prevalent in this administration are going to follow your administration. And that's a concern I've heard throughout, but it's my concern as well. Is that a valid concern of mine?
It's not a valid concern because we have people from all administrations, and from the very beginning we've opened up our doors to everyone. And I think people are gravitating towards our team because they know we're a winning team.
Okay, you're a winning team, but also I have heard about inclusion. I think I've heard a message that you talk about your inclusive team and whatnot. But I've heard people that have voiced their views, who are members of the Democratic Party, who active in the chat group that were expelled because they said that they supported this candidate or that candidate. And that is another fear, that even subtly, that out of different views are not welcome.
Well, I was not a part of that. I don't manage a chat room. I think the decision was made that if you're not supporting the Democrats and you're going to be on a Democratic chat room supporting somebody who's an opponent to the Democrats, they made that decision. But we are not going to be any other administration. We're not going to be the continuation of any administration. We are going to build on any legacies that we can build on from all of the administrations. What we will continue to do is to work on the areas that Basil and I have been working on, but we will enhance and expand on those areas of energy and healthcare and housing and public safety and all of those areas. Those are the things we're going to continue, but we're going to do them our way.
So what do you feel has been the legacy of this administration? That you say, because you said you're going to build on the legacies of previous administrations.
I think, one of the areas that I think is very important for me to build on is the emphasis on early childhood education. When we know that our children are entering school unprepared, have not met many of the milestones that they should have had. So that's one that I would like to build on, that I feel is very important to the achievement of our children as they move into the educational system.
Delegate, Ms. Yoki spoke about us being outside the custom zone, the
Yes.
Virgin Islands being outside the custom zone.
Yes.
I want to carry it back there in terms of the D1 status. I know you're familiar with the D1 status and the additional economical challenges that are going to bring to the Virgin Islands.
Yes.
What's your plan to deal with the D1 status, or do you have a plan?
My goodness. I've been on the phone and talking when we found out about it, because nobody was made aware of it until the decision came down. And it's an immigration issue.
Yes.
And it is a national issue. It's not just the Virgin Islands that are suffering from that. Florida has the same thing. As long as it's a U.S. company, they must hire U.S. first before they go to foreign employees. We've looked at how the transportation has to go. We've told them that they are really putting us at an unfair advantage to foreign jurisdictions, which Homeland Security has been doing through unintended consequences from the time the department has set up, and that we need to have some kind of special treatment in this regard. So because the shipping companies will just not come here. They will just not come here. They'll unload somewhere else where it's easier. And we thought that the Jones Act would help us, but it's not a Jones Act issue. It's an immigration issue. And as much as I have some problems with some of the issues around immigration reform, I long for it to come. I long for it to come.
I think this is where our established relationships come in, because we just came back from DC and we were talking to a firm that is expert in Jones Act issues, customs zone issues, who are willing to help. And again, me being a former employee of the Department of Interior, I understand how the internal federal process must work to begin seeking some relief. It's not always pretty, it's not always immediate, but you have to be nuanced in how you approach it. And I could tell you, having been there at times when the Virgin Islands was at risk at certain things, having to be internally maneuvered to make sure that we didn't lose. And I think that's where our experience with and our relationships with folks who are in position to help will be invaluable.
So do you feel comfortable in us actually getting the exemption from immigration?
It's something that I think we would have the best chance of working at, because we know the players. I've been on the Homeland Security Committee for several years, from the time it was just an ad hoc committee. So I know the players, and I think we'd have the best chance at doing something about it. Just this week, we had to deal with the Department of Agriculture, who was holding up a shipment. And then one day, we were just calling and saying, no, my businesses need this. We were able to open that up. And, so the departments know us, they respect us, and so of any team running, we're the ones that will have the best opportunity to get that fixed.
Now, we've received, well, at least I've received 2 recurring questions. One, Clint already asked you, which is in regards to the faces that seem to want to transpose themselves into your campaign, who are currently in the current administration, and how you were going to deal with that issue. And I heard your answer. I accept your answer as the only answer you can give. I mean, I don't think there's a different answer that you can give. You can't really say, sorry, don't come to me. Don't vote for me.
We need every vote from everywhere. And we have people from the Turnbull administration working with us as well.
So I accept your response to that, and I believe that you are an independent thinker, and you can discern who is coming to your camp to really be there or not be there. The second question, though, that was asked is with you. And as you know, right now there's a current lawsuit filed in district court about your eligibility to run for office because of your residency. Take this time to explain to our viewers this issue, whether it's a non-issue or not, this issue regarding your residency to actually be on the ticket to hold office.
I mean, I think it is a non-issue because the pertinent facts is where have I voted? Since 18 years old, I've been registered in the Virgin Islands, and I have only voted in the Virgin Islands. I've not voted anyplace else. There are local statutes that have been in place from 1968 that have said if a Virgin Islander takes a position and because of the federal government or the local government that causes him to have to leave the territory, as long as he does not exercise a change in his residency by voting someplace else, he has the right to retain his domicile in the Virgin Islands. And it came apparent when I went to former Ambassador Todman's funeral. His son got up and said, despite the fact that he had been away from the Virgin Islands for all of those years, he never voted anyplace else. And he continued his domicile in the Virgin Islands. And you got to think that why the formers of that piece of legislation put that in place is they wanted to make sure that any of our sons or daughters who had left these shores to improve themselves, that we would always have the benefit of their experience to become a part of our leadership when they return, if they so chose. And so the law is there clearly stating that I am a qualified person. I've never voted any place, and I challenge anybody to find that. I heard some innocuous things about driver's license. The Virgin Islands requires you, regardless of where your domicile is, if you are here for longer than 90 days, you have to get a Virgin Islands license. But does that make you a Virgin Islander? No. And so I think people need to read the law, do your research, and you'll see that that is a non-issue. And we have moved on.
And there you have it. So now you have your answer.
Yes.
And so hopefully whoever is confused as to that issue will no longer be confused as to that issue. But I felt that it was important for you to explain it so that there's not misconceptions about that specific issue and the fact that a lawsuit has been filed.
I think it was important because even though we answered it in the primary, it has surfaced again in the general. So thank you for that.
Now, what I want to also ask you is, I don't know the last time we had a balanced budget sent to the legislature from the governor's office. And so what would you do? What plans do you have to ensure that when you send on a budget, one, on time, and two, to make it balanced?
The law requires that it be balanced, and we want to make sure that we have accurate revenue projections. We plan to budget by priority and to ensure that, and actually evaluate the way the departments have performed and make sure that we're putting the money where we're going to provide the best services for the people of the territory. And we'll just make sure, and we want to, as I said in the first answer to the first question, to make sure that we have to find ways to bring in the revenue.
So are you saying you're going to do a combination of performance budget and zero budgeting to make, because you say priorities as well as performance, evaluate performance.
Yes.
So that's what you're going to look at in terms of putting.
And I think
budget in
mostly
legislation.
priorities in particular, identifying setting priorities for this government and budgeting by priority. But there was something else I was also going to say about that, and I kind of lost my train of thought. But
let me ask you quick while you're trying to remember that. You have a lot of people in the community who are very concerned and upset with Diageo. Is that something that you feel you should revisit? Should you become governor? Especially with the fact that everybody west of Diageo is now suffering, especially the plant by West Airport Road, especially suffering with this black fungus that nobody seems to be able to handle, that really wasn't an issue before Diageo came here. So is that something that you would revisit should you become governor?
I can't revisit the contract. I can't change the contract.
Judge Gomez says you can. That's a different story. But yeah, Judge Gomez in the 8% case where all the unions had sued the government, Judge Gomez says as long as you can find a public welfare issue, then you can breach any contract.
And
so you can revisit it. I don't know what happened with it, but
I mean, it has to be very extreme, and I think the Supreme Court is going to be dealing with that in the issue of retirement systems and their obligations to the retirees. But certainly the issue of the black mold, and we've been following what's been happening in Kentucky with the same situation. I think the black mold existed to some extent before Diageo, but now with the increased production of rum and the storage of it there, it's greatly increasing. So we're following it. We've been in contact with EPA on that issue, and that is an issue that I have discussed with Diageo and will continue to work on. On the contract, that contract is a 30-year contract.
60.
With an option to renew for another 30 years. I believe in honoring contracts, and unless, I wouldn't say we wouldn't enter into any discussions given our financial situation, but I would have to honor the contract that we have.
One other question I have, and this is sort of on a personal level for me, when, and it has to do with the campaigning, when these ads came out for VI Restore Hope, they, as a voter, and I am also a registered Democrat, immediately turned me off because I hated the tone. And they clearly were being supported by the Christensen Ottley. That's the impression it gave, that they were supported by the Christensen Ottley team. I bring that up because this current administration has created and developed a culture of vindictiveness and retribution, where, as you spoke about whistleblowing before, where you're saying you don't know why people aren't doing it as much because they've been trained now for the past 8 years, that if they do so, that
you're not protected, and that's an issue not only here but other places. We will ensure that they're protected.
Ads seem to promote that same type of culture. So I just want to know what's your take on those ads that have been coming out lately, especially the ones that clearly are saying, vote for number, maybe number 5 is your number.
I have pulled ads that my staff have created that I thought were not what I would have coming from my campaign. Mm-hmm. I had discussions with VI Restore Hope on my opinion of the ads. Mm-hmm. We did not pay for them. They paid for them. They chose to run the ads as they saw fit, and I think you've seen a change in the tone of the ads. But those were independently run ads that we had nothing to do with.
But I think there have been ads by other folks out there that have been disparaging and created some misinformation and could be perceived as negative. Do you have an opinion about some of those other things?
I mean, I do have an opinion with all of them, but the ones especially that have been coming from VI Restore Hope specifically have just really left a very sour taste in my mouth that has really for me turned me against it.
Actually, to tell you the truth, I am so ready for November 5th to get here.
Me too.
Because I am just completely exhausted with this election 2014 cycle. I am.
But I can say this. I mean, we don't control independent organizations. Through the primary, we were attacked. And we kept a clean, issue-oriented campaign.
And we continue
and
to
that's
do
what
that
we
right
continue
now.
to do. We don't have control over independent bodies who want to do things a certain way. But what you can see from our campaign and the way we conduct ourselves, the delegate has 18 years of being a candidate. And I think people need to take an evaluation of how she has conducted herself as a politician. And I think that should stand for something.
And Mr. Ottley, I like how you put it. You said the delegate has 18 years and people should evaluate.
Sure.
And you're correct.
And we want them to.
And if you think about one of those ads you could label as attacking, and one of them was by a Democratic candidate, he basically, which was Marvin Pickering, when he ran his ad, he basically used the delegate's record and he was labeled as negative.
That's simplifying.
But he utilized the delegate's record as well as he utilized a snippet of a tape from her testimony before the Senate.
That totally misconstrued what happened.
But again, he was.
But again, it was misrepresenting what the actual discussion and dialogue was between me and the senator.
But he was labeled as an attack. Then a group of Democrats for the other candidate put forth an ad that evaluated the delegate's record of 18 years. And then I heard
misrepresented.
You could say misrepresent and understand. But then I heard the term negative. And I would not label that ad as being negative. I would say they analyzed and from their perspective, they were evaluating the delegate's record.
And let's say this. I mean, we're running our campaign. People are going to do things. But we're running our campaign. We're trying to make them about the issues. And that's what we're going to continue to do. This is politics. And you know the story in VI politics is a hardball game.
And if you were to talk to anybody
at
VI Restore Hope, they will tell you that they got a call from me.
But you know the shameful thing about it with VI Restore Hope? You never heard VI Restore Hope champion anything under 8%. You didn't hear VI Restore Hope speak about Senator Hansen sitting there wrongfully in the legislature. You have not heard anything from VI Restore Hope. The only time VI Restore Hope surfaced is during the gubernatorial election cycle. So it's better to say that VI Restore Hope is looking for favors from the Christian Ottley campaign.
We have a lot of entities that only surface when there's a campaign.
Correct, but it seems to say that they're looking for favors from you guys.
There have been no discussions with anyone on any favors, whether they be from this administration, from VI Restore Hope, or anyone else, because we are going to choose. As in some instances, we're going to take a step back from choosing our cabinet and put a real strong transition team in place.
Good.
On some of those key areas like education and public safety,
yes.
and have that strong leadership from the community help us to choose who those leaders would be.
And so, since VI Restore Hope is not running for office, I don't want to talk about it anymore. And so, what I would like to talk about, however, is where our viewers and the community can find you if they have more questions for you, where you can sit with you and talk. So, because we're about a month in before we go to our before we vote. Let our audience know your number, where you can run out of time, where they can find you, we can talk some more with you, and for those who are unsure as to where they want to vote or who they want to vote for, why the Christensen Ottley team is a team to vote for.
Well, they can find us. We have 3 headquarters in St. Croix, one next to McDonald's in Golden Rock, one at Barron Spot, and one in Frederickstead. Our website has just been redone. It's up. It's donnabasil.com, www.donnabasil.com. Very simple. And we also have a Facebook page that is updated regularly with what's going on and where we are. Our phone numbers at our headquarters are very simple: 773-VOTE, 778-VOTE. So we're very easy to contact. But we have been, I think Basil and I, despite the fact that we're Democrats and work in Democratic administrations, and the same issues that tend to raise happen with the CBC and the president. We don't always agree, and we find ways to voice our disagreement. They may not always be in public. But I can give you several examples. One on the property tax issue, because I wrote and spoke to both governor and lieutenant governor saying, put a moratorium on these property tax sales until such time as you can figure out how one person's been buying all of these. I didn't even realize that there was all the schemes that were going on, but there was something definitely wrong. And on the 8% and on the layoffs, and my letter never made it public, but the governor's heated response to me came out on radio when I said, those are matters of last resort. Let us sit down and figure out how we're going to do this another way. So Democrats can disagree. Different Democrats provide different leadership. And the leadership that Basil and I plan to bring to this territory with the vote and the support of the people is a very progressive kind of leadership that builds on whatever legacies are left, but we create our own, built on our love for these Virgin Islands and our desire to serve and our knowledge that we can bring the kind of leadership that this territory needs because of our experience and the relationships that we have and because of our ongoing and long-term commitment to improving the lives of the people of this territory.
And what is your number?
Number 5 on the ballot.
Number 5. I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the tough and pressing questions. I mean, I think you're right. It is some of the questions that people want to hear in the community. I joined this great woman because I have great faith and confidence in her ability to lead us through what I think is some of the toughest times that we face in a very long time. I came to this team out of the promise that we're going to make the tough choices, that we're going to make the bold moves and make the bold decisions because we don't have a choice. The status quo is not acceptable. This is about my children, your children. How are we going to meet a new day of greater competition? The statistics are there that tell us that our children are going to have a difficult time competing in the world. I want the best for my children, and I'm willing to do whatever needs be to give them a fighting chance. What exists is not giving them a fighting chance. And so for me, there is no choice but to lead in a different direction. And we all know what those tough choices have been. We know. I think Donna is the right person that can bring the healing that's necessary in our community, because you're right, things have gotten ugly. But I think if you look at how she has carried herself as a politician, as a leader, as a doctor, as a humanitarian, as an activist, she's willing to stand up against power and to make the hard choices. And it's truly my honor to work with her to do the things that we know we must do. As D. Hamilton Jackson said, do my people do. And it's time for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we also want to hear their voices. Wish you a happy belated birthday. You had a birthday recently.
Thank you.
And so you are one of our guests who always come onto the show without any fanfare and any issues. You say, sure, I'm coming. Yes. And so if you have voice, we wish you a happy belated birthday.
Thank you very much.
Hope you had a great one.
And yes, it was. It was wonderful. We celebrated it in the West, in Frederickstead. So
well, that's the best place to do so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you for the opportunity again.
All right, thank you. You're number 5 on the ballot.
Number 5 on the ballot.
I want to make sure that you all go out and vote. It is extremely important that you vote. If you are not registered to vote, please do so as soon as you can. And we want you to also make sure to ask the questions of people who want your vote. That is your responsibility, and it is their obligation to answer your questions. Anyone who doesn't want to answer your questions is an individual who should not be getting your vote. All questions that you should ask should be questions that are part of your decision-making process as to who you want to vote for. And again, as I say in every show, one important factor you must look at is also not just to vote for who is running for governor or senator or delegate. but to also look at those individuals who are seeking a seat on your elections board. It is extremely important. They are the first set of people before they even get there.
Right.
Those are the first set of people that set those policies. And we have to make sure that the people who are there have integrity, that they are transparent, and that they are dedicated to having fair and just elections in our territory. So it's extremely important that you go down there. But I want you to also understand that your vote makes a difference in this community. You make a difference in this community. And I need for all of you to go out, register to vote, ask questions of every single person seeking your vote, and make sure that your voice is heard because it's important. Good night, everybody.
Right.